Hello, everybody.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, today we are going to be starting some Darkness Ablaze stuff. And I mean, why not just jump into the most popular deck probably coming out of Darkness Ablaze with Eternatus VMax. So that is the deck profile that we are going to be doing today. I have some gameplay footage that is going to be either out before this or after this. I never know which, but just keep an eye out for that. It might already be out. And yeah, we will see. This is an Eternatus deck that is not using Weavile. So I know that there's some Eternatus decks that are using Weavile as energy acceleration, and then you kind of can combine that with other Pokemon other than Eternatus or maybe Spiritomb, but I'm focusing on the Eternatus VMax with no GXs style deck. All Darkness Pokemon, and all the rest of them are like single prizers, basically. So yeah, that's kind of the deck profile that this is. I'm probably going to do a Weavile one in the future at some point, but yep, starting with the basics, and I'll just talk you through the deck profile and some of my thoughts on it. But without further ado, let's just jump into it. All right, so yeah, this profile is going to feature Eternatus V and VMax. The first one of those is Eternatus V. We have four Eternatus Vs. Now, what this does is a little bit of glare there, but I'll show you. What this does is its first attack does 30 damage, and it allows you to attach a darkness energy, a basic darkness, from your hand to one of your benched Pokemon. So it's good if you're like very first turn, you got nothing else to do, right? You might as well hit for 30, set up some knockouts maybe, and then attach another darkness energy to one of your bench Pokemon. That can also stave off a little bit of, energy denial that might come up a little bit later. So I think actually a pretty good first attack to get off if you can manage it. But I have four of those so that I can find it easily, and then four of the Eternatus VMax. So this Eternatus VMax, it has an ability, which you can't really read here, but its ability says that as long as you only have Darkness Pokemon on your bench, you can have up to 8 Pokemon on your bench, but they can only be Darkness type, and you can't play any other Pokemon other than Darkness Pokemon once this ability is active. Now, if at any point you don't have a Darkness Pokemon on, you have something other than a Darkness on your bench for some reason, you would discard down to 5. Yeah. And its attack is 30 times. So 30 times the number of Pokemon, I think it is, on your 30 times number of Darkness Pokemon that you have in play, I believe. So basically, if you have a full bench of 8 plus this one counts, that is a max damage cap of 270, which is pretty good. 270 damage is pretty good for only 2 energy, a Darkness and a colorless energy. So yeah, I think it's a potentially very interesting attacker. I have a 4-4 line in this. You could maybe even go down to a 3-3 line, find some deck space for some other stuff, but really we're focusing on consistency. And just because, you want a big bench, so you can have lots of these on the bench potentially. So we have a 4-4 line of the Eternatus and Eternatus VMax. And then we are gonna have the next best card in the set is Crobat V. So if you're familiar with Expanded, Crobat V is basically Shaman EX. What its ability says is that when you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench, you may draw until you have 6 cards in hand. Now the difference between this and Shaman, which is an Expanded, is you can only play one of these per turn. So I think it's a good balance from what I hear from people who are familiar with Expanded, but we have 3 of these in the deck to get us a bunch of draw power, hopefully a couple of turns. Also, this helps fill up our bench with a Pokemon that is not easily snipeable, because this has 180 HP, so a Cramorant cannot take it out in one shot. You can still have it gusted up and knocked out pretty easily, so be aware of that, but good Pokemon to have on your bench. Next, we need some other attackers, because Eternatus VMax alone, you need a bunch of Darkness Pokemon, one, and Eternatus VMax alone is not really going to be able to get through things like Zamazenta. It's not really going to be able to get through things like Decidueye, which is potentially a very popular deck. So we have 3 Spiritombs. This is the Spiritomb that has Building Spite. You can put a damage counter on it every turn. An Anguish Cry, which says 10 plus 30 times the number of damage counters. So In this deck, this Pokemon will max out at 160 damage, but 160 damage knocks out a Decidueye in one hit. So we have 3 Spiritombs there, which is really important for knocking out that Decidueye. So that's going to be a popular deck at first. I don't know what the right build for Decidueye is, so Decidueye does snipe 20 damage to the bench, so just be aware of that. If you're building something like this up, that it could get sniped, so you might have to give up a couple of prizes just to take out a Decidueye or 2. So it's still certainly no guarantee. But speaking of another counter to Decidueye, we have 2 of the new Hoopas. This Hoopa has 120 HP, which is a little bit beefier, and its attack does 90 damage as long as this Pokemon was on your bench during your turn and then became active. So it will do 0 damage if it was in the active to begin with and didn't move. So this is kind of like Zapdos, except it just does a flat 90 for 1 darkness. Now again, the nice thing about the Spiritomb and the Hoopa in this build is because we don't have energy acceleration, 1 darkness energy is all you need. So even if you're like, Eternatus VMax gets blown up, right, by something, you can still get some attacks off in a couple of turns in a row. So those are our attacking Pokemon. And then we have some other support Pokemon that help us reach for OHKO-ish range on VMAXs. So we have 2 copies of Galarian Zigzagoon that lets you put a damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon. It's perfect against ADP because if you can hit them for 270 and then ping them for 1, that's a knockout, that's 3 prizes. It's also good against VMAXs because you hit them for 270, you ping them for one of these, maybe you get a scoop up net later, that's 280, 290, 300, right? So now you're only like 10, 20, 30 damage short on taking a knockout, which is easily clean upable with Hoopa or Spiritomb, or the last inclusion in this deck, which I was on the fence about this, I've thought about it. It does take up 4 spaces in the deck, but I actually like it because it forces your opponent to play around it, which is a 2/2 line of Garbodor. Now, the reason I like this and the reason I think it's worth it to allocate the space to it is because I play a few stadiums in this deck. Other people are probably going to play stadiums, and the stadiums I play in this deck will place damage counters when they move from the active. So if you think about the math, think if you're going up against even an Eternatus Mirror, right? You hit the Eternatus for 270. If you can ping them 2-3 times with the Zigzagoon, let's say 3 is an average, right? Now they're up at 300, so they have 40 damage left. If you poison them, that's 310, right? And then I have a stadium that if they switch from the active, that does 2 damage counters onto them. So that's already 330. So you're just 1 damage counter shy. So if you get, 2 Zigzagoons and 2 scoop up nets, that's 340. You're basically saying I only have to hit you once. I'm going to poison you, and I'm going to put you in a situation where you either just sit there and take extra damage counters, which, if they can't OHKO you back, they don't want to do, they're just going to lose. Or they have to switch, and if you have the Spikemuth Stadium out, which I'll show you in a second, they're going to take damage counters for moving and stopping the poison. So that, I think, is a powerful combination of the poison plus the Spikemuth. Placing all those extra damage counters really puts those VMAXs in OHKO range a lot. So I like Garbodor for forcing your opponent to either move out of the active or just take the poison. Before we get into the stadiums, though, that is all the Pokemon. Let's talk about the supporters. Now, we are getting a new supporter in this set. We are getting Piers. Now, what Piers does, Piers allows you to search your deck for a darkness Pokemon, doesn't have to be basic as far as I understand the translation, and an energy. Doesn't have to be darkness, can be a special energy. I think this could also be seeing a lot of play in decks that just need to find twin or triple acceleration or any of that, right? So I think Piers is going to be a very good supporter card. Yeah, I think there's a lot of decks that could benefit from Piers because if you find a Crobat and whatever energy you need, including special energy, you don't have to give up anything. It's kind of better in some ways than Guzma and Hala. Granted, you don't get the stadium, but you don't have to give up anything. I don't know. I like Piers. So we have 4 Piers in this deck to find us our Crobats or any other darkness Pokemon we might need. We also have 3 Marnies. So this is where my list might deviate from other lists. I chose not to bother with research. I don't want to be discarding a lot of things from this hand. That can sometimes be a problem because you could get into a situation where you don't have a lot of ways to discard your hand down for a Crobat. So I could see that being a problem, right? So maybe you consider a one-off Guzma and Hala just to discard a few things, grab some stuff, and then play a Crobat so you have like a low hand size. But 3 Marnies in this deck for some disruption to your opponent. And then we have 2 Boss's Orders. 2 Boss's Orders, just really good to grab something off the bench, right? Good gust. So now we can get into the stadiums. I have 2 of the new stadium Spikemuth. Now, like I said, Spikemuth, if you or your opponent, it doesn't matter who, but if you or your opponent moves from the active to the bench, that Pokemon that moved to the bench takes 2 damage counters. So this is really good against your opponent with Garbodor. It's also really good if you use Spiritomb as a pivot. That allows you to, over the course of a turn or 2, right? Like if you're getting a Hoopa knocked out or something, you can put 2 damage counters, build Spite. Now you're at 3. Then you can go up to the front, put 2 damage counters when you go back. Now you're at 5. So it's a really quick way without Jinx to go from 0 to 5 damage counters in just like a turn and a half, basically. So 2 Spikemuths. And then we also have 1 Black Market Prism Star. This does not rotate, so it is a great option to put into this deck. Maybe you can prevent your opponent from taking the necessary prizes they need to win the game late in the game. So 1 Black Market Prism Star. Now, another aspect of a deck that relies on the number of Pokemon on your bench in order to do max damage is you want to maximize the number of Pokemon search options you have, which is why we have 4 Quick Balls and 4 Great Balls. A lot of Pokemon search between Quick Ball, Great Ball, and Piers. And then we even have 1 Evolution Incense, because I've had moments where I just want to go grab a Garbodor or an Eternatus VMax. I don't want to worry about grabbing that with my Piers. I can use that card in my hand, grab another card out of my deck, evolve something up, then use Piers for a Crobat and the energy. So good way to also like use cards, get them out of your hand. So I do like maybe a 1 of Evolution Incense there. So in terms of being able to spread some damage around and get Pokemon out of the active, we have 4 Scoop Up Nets, primarily for the Zigzagoons, just so you can get all those extra pings. Beyond that, we have 2 switches because you still might need to switch out of the actives at some point for Hoopa or whatever, and 1 Reset Stamp. The 1 of Reset Stamp, it's in there right now. I have the Marnies, I have the Reset Stamp. Maybe it comes into play some games, maybe it doesn't. It's an easy card to discard early, and it's really useful in the late game. So you could maybe find something else that fits better in there. Now, the final thing here is the energy count. So for the energy count, we have 4 of the new darkness energy, the special darkness energy. I think it's called Hide Dark. But what this does is it makes it so that your darkness Pokemon that it's attached to have 0 retreat cost. So 4 of those energy. And then we also have, and that's searchable by Piers. So just a reminder there. We have 6 regular darkness energy. So 6 basic dark for a total of 10 energy. It seems to be plenty for this deck. This only takes 2 energy to work, 1 energy, 1 energy. And you're probably not using the attacks of anything else. If you are, you've probably already lost. So that is the lineup for this Eternatus VMax deck. I think it's really good. It's probably similar to a lot of the decks you may have seen coming out of Japan. I think it's because this is a very good starting place for this deck. The main differences, honestly, are Garbodor. The Garbodor and maybe Spikemuth combo is maybe a different thing than what people are running in Japan. I like it though, so that's what I would recommend you playing around with. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, definitely subscribe. Check out some of the other videos that I have on Darkness Ablaze. I'm going to be coming out with more, probably 1 or 2 a week in terms of different decks. And let me know if you have any deck profiles you want me to cover specifically. Always open to that. And I am streaming all of these matches that I'm doing on Twitch as well. So if you want to follow me on Twitch, you can find that in the description down below, the link. And it's inconsistent when I stream, but that's what I'll be streaming a lot more often is live tabletop gameplay of me testing out all these decks, so you can ask me questions in the Twitch stream. But that is going to do it for me. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in a future video. Carpe awesome.